Well, joining me now in the studio is Mamoun Al-Abbasi, news editor at the Middle East Eye website. On Skype, Dr. Dawood Abdullah, director of the Middle East Monitor, and on the line, Richard Pater, director of the British Israel Communications and Research Centre. Welcome to the programme. Let me start with you, Mamoun Al-Abbasi. I mean, what has sparked off this latest, quite serious exchanges of fire?
Well, there's always been an ongoing Israeli attacks in Syria. And lately, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah has threatened that the next time there's an Israeli attack, Hezbollah would respond. And it looks like the Israelis have called his bluff and carried out an attack of their own. The problem here is that neither side really wants a full-blown conflict, but all sides want an appearance of a conflict. Netanyahu wants a distraction from the mess that's at home. So he wants a victory or an appearance of a battle for his elections. Hezbollah today are not the Hezbollah of 2006. They're no longer the heroes of resistance. They're more like the helpers of dictatorship. Their former allies, the Syrian Sunnis who fought alongside them during 2006, are fighting against them today. So they need that boost of morale to show that they are still the resistance party. Iran, again, prior to the Arab Spring, the opinion polls across the Arab world were very favorable of them. After the Arab Spring, they have everybody's looking in the Arab world and Islamic world, are very critical of them. So it's a PR victory for everybody if it's all under control.
Well, Richard Pater, let me talk to you now in Israel. Is it all under control?
Well, the situation is definitely very tense right now. We are awaiting the Israel Security Cabinet is in emergency session right now to decide the next steps. I don't think this is your last guest mentioned a PR victory. This is obviously another sad day for Israel. 2 soldiers have been attacked and killed, and there are several others who have been injured. So this is another sad day. This was obviously a response to the alleged Israeli attack from last week, and Israeli analysts understood that it was a question of when and where, and not if that
and this is the attack that killed an Iranian general and half a dozen Hezbollah fighters. Is that the one you're talking about? That's the one, yes. Which, as I said, has not been taken officially credit by Israel, but it's been alleged that it was Israel that carried out. Because today we also see as an example of Hezbollah, which is, from Israel's perspective, a terrorist organization, a proxy of the Iranian regime, which sits on Israeli borders. And not only after 2006, there has been, thankfully, a quieting deterrence held on the Lebanese border, but since the weakness and instability in Syria, we've seen Hezbollah spread the tentacles of terror over into Syrian territory. And the attack last week was a kind of a preemption of the terror bases that Hezbollah are setting up on the Syrian side of the Golan. And today is another example of a classic modus operandi of Hezbollah, targeting with anti-tank missiles and unprotected Israeli vehicles. Well, Dawood Abdullah, let me bring you in on Skype. I mean, this is happening on the Lebanese side against Israel. What about Syria? I mean, is this a sort of triangular thing, or is this mainly a Lebanese versus Israel issue?
No, it's definitely, good afternoon, Jonathan. It's definitely triangular. And the key player, the third party here, is Iran. As you pointed out, the previous speaker pointed out, a general, an Iranian general, was killed last week. And there was also always this threat by the Iranians that there will be reprisals. In fact, yesterday, the deputy foreign minister of Iran, Hussein Abdul Alahan, he said that a message was conveyed to Israel through the Americans that Israel had indeed crossed a red line. Now, it was always on the cards that Hezbollah would not have acted without the approval or knowledge of the Iranians. And it appears that, the strike or the raid today, or the killing of the Israelis and alleged capture of one of their soldiers has been coordinated between Iran and Lebanon.
Richard Pater, I mean, was it not a bit unwise of Israel to make this preemptive strike, which has killed an Iranian general? I mean, they were maybe transferring weapons of some kind or another, but they weren't actually attacking Israel. So why attack them?
Well, we don't have, as I said, Israel officially has taken no credit for this, so that we're in the realm of speculation. But we would understand at least that for Israel, if they did launch such an attack, that there was either there was an imminent threat available, and that there was as I mentioned, the terror infrastructure that was being developed along the Syrian border. We don't know how if this imminent threat was a matter of minutes, hours, or days or weeks. That's open for speculation. It's clear that the Israeli military establishment takes these decisions very, very, very carefully and judiciously. And on this occasion, it was it was obviously factored in. Again, we're presuming this was the calculation, that it was seen as a serious enough threat that was worthy of disrupting the status quo and the relative quiet, because Israel has no desire to be dragged into the Syrian theatre at all. So only when a threat is imminent on Israel's border do they feel the need to respond.
Mamoun al-Abbasi, coming back to you, Benjamin Netanyahu said that the Hezbollah people should look at what happened in Gaza. That seems to suggest he might be contemplating a really massive series of airstrikes and bombing raids on South Lebanon. Do you think that is likely?
It's hard to predict at the moment, but he's in no position to make such threat at the end of the day, whether it's in Gaza or in Syria's Golan or in Lebanon's South Shab'a. Israel is an occupying power. All the forces have the right to resist. It's not a terrorist attack, as my colleague here says. They have every right, but the real victim here is the majority of the Syrian people. They got lost of a war of PRs, war of showing off at a time where they're in a desperate need, to put forward their case. Hezbollah is not genuine about the resistance this time, but of course it has every right to defend the occupied land occupied by Israel. It's just that this time it is playing more of a PR, and the victim here is the Syrian people. We have over 200,000 dead.
It's a very risky policy, isn't it? Because Israel may now retaliate because 2 of its soldiers have died. Then Hezbollah will be expected to retaliate for that.
If Israel retaliates on a wide scale, and that at the moment I think that's unlikely to make another 2006, but this again will be a moral victory for Hezbollah. It'll give Assad some breathing space. It'll give Iranians some good credit, but all again at the expense of the Syrian population.
Richard Pater, I mean, it seems that this latest attack by Israel has killed a Spanish UN peacekeeper. I mean, that's a terrible blunder, isn't it? I mean, or would Israel like the UN to disappear from the region?
Well, no. On the contrary of disappearing, Israel and UNIFIL have a very professional, cordial working relationship. They work in close, sometimes daily contact, and this is if indeed, I mean, the IDF that I spoke to earlier, we're going to be investigating this incident exactly to understand what happened and what sort of malfunction went on, because it's obviously in no one's interest to see UN peacekeepers in any way.
They're not denying that it was Israel that killed this Spanish peacekeeper.
Well, my understanding is they don't know yet. They haven't yet taken full responsibility, but they're not denying it either. They need to investigate the circumstances, and I'm sure they will do this in full coordination with UNIFIL. And obviously, if this was a tragic error by the Israeli side, then they will then they would apologise, because it's in no one's interest to target UN personnel, of course.
Dawood Abdullah, coming back to you, are you pessimistic? Do you think that this could really escalate out of control, or is it containable?
I think for the moment, neither of the parties would like to see a further escalation. Netanyahu, if he retaliates, then there will be, a response, a counter attack from Hezbollah, and it can get out of hand. And there will be massive damage to the infrastructure of both countries. Already the Israelis have announced the closure of schools in the north and roads, and even the patrols on the border have, come to an end. But Jonathan, just let me go back to some of the context in which this happened. Last week, the attack was launched on the Hezbollah people and the Iranians just when President Obama was about to veto the Congress's attempt to or push for further sanctions on Iran. And it seems to the onlooker that this was an attempt. The attack in the Golan was an attempt to throw a spanner into the works, as it were, and upset, what the president has been trying to do, by drawing the Americans, and naturally they are strategic allies of the Israelis. And if it comes to a confrontation with Hezbollah or Iran, we know the Americans will stand with Israel. So he chose this time to do this. However, if it escalates into a war, then and Israel takes a battering, he will be the loser in the elections. If he doesn't retaliate, he will be seen as a coward inside Israel. And so he's really in a bind on this occasion. If he does, he'll be damned. If he doesn't do, he still will be damned. It's all in his own making.
Well, Richard, just the last point, we'll have to end soon. Is this going to have a big effect on the election that's quite imminent in Israel?
Well, of course, on one level, we can't ignore the fact that Israel is an election cycle, and it's only open to speculation if there is ongoing tension, how that will play out and affect the elections. But I'm quite convinced that the operative decisions made by the IDF are not influenced by the electoral process. These are made purely on security and operational parameters alone. And therefore, we'll have to wait and see, and for all of us to keep monitoring the situation.
Well, thank you, and thank you, the other two speakers as well. That's all we have time for in this part of the program. Do join us for the second part of the show, where we'll be taking a look at the ongoing crisis over the Japanese war reporter captured by the IS group, and of course, looking as well at the rest of today's news. Stay with us.